The United States is very unique in that, unlike almost any other country on earth, it taxes its citizens and green card holders capital gains and income no matter where they live in the world. So one investor recently asked me, what's the point of having a second passport as an American? I'm going to tell you. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist. We're the channel and the company that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And let's talk about why a U.S. citizen would want to have a second passport. I'm not going to talk about all the benefits of dual citizenship in general, but the question that I was asked was, how does a second passport benefit a U.S. citizen if one gets exit taxed anyway? And so let me explain what the questioner is asking. What they're saying is if you're a U.S. citizen and you want to give up your U.S. citizenship, you may be subject to an exit tax at departure. So you go in, you renounce your citizenship, you raise your right hand and you sign the form, they take your passport back, you go out on your merry way. Now, you're not liable to have an American passport, you're not liable for American taxation, you're not liable for any of the rules. You are out of the system. And if you want to be totally out of the system as an American, as a U.S. person, that is the most extreme way to do it. If you're from the UK, from Canada, from Australia, at least for now, you can go through the sometimes laborious process of simply moving out of your country, getting rid of everything for the most part in your country, and then setting up a new life somewhere else or in multiple somewhere else's. And Americans don't have that privilege. Now, you can legally reduce your taxes on many different types of earnings, income, etc., by moving overseas or by moving to Puerto Rico. So there are plenty of ways to legally reduce your taxes as an American. That's a common misconception that, oh, well, they tax worldwide, you can't do anything. You have the foreign income exclusion. You have foreign corporations and structures around that. You have Puerto Rico. You have many different things that you can do. But if you just want to be totally out, you could choose to renounce your citizenship. And so when you do that, there's an exit tax. There's a couple different criteria. Number one, you've got a net worth of $2 million or more the date of expatriation. Number two, you have paid a substantial amount of federal income taxes, about $860,000 over the last 5 years of federal tax liability, not income earned, but actual taxes paid. Or your taxes just aren't in compliance. And you'd be surprised how many people think they're in compliance, but the IRS lost their return, or they never signed it, or somehow it wasn't received, or they had some kind of offshore bank account. Their accountant told them they didn't need a report. I've seen that too many times. You're not in compliance. And so if you fail any of those tests, you're subject to an exit tax. Now, there are ways you can work on that. Obviously, you can get in compliance. You can wait and reduce your income tax by living overseas, and then you get rid of issue number two. You can do certain things with your net worth legally. But if you have to pay an exit tax, then you have to pay an exit tax. What people don't understand is it's an unrealized capital gains tax. So let's say this gentleman was a cryptocurrency investor. Let's say you bought in for basically nothing. Now it's worth $10 million. And you've never sold any of that. You've never realized any of those gains. You're going to be liable for whether it's 2-point-something million or perhaps under the Biden administration, $4-point-something million in capital gains. You would pay that if you stayed in the United States, but they're saying, well, hey, we're just going to push that forward because you're leaving. How are we going to track you down in God knows where? Now, they do have ways, by the way, so you don't think that just once you're out of the U.S., once you've renounced, that somehow they can't get to you. All the stuff. If your taxes aren't compliant, they can still get you. If you have civil, charges, lawsuits, criminal charges, that stuff just doesn't go away. But this is their last chance to easily get the cash from you. And so they're going to apply this basically unrealized capital gains tax, which is one reason why it's always better to get out earlier, and one reason why we do accept as clients here cryptocurrency investors who don't have that much but are rapidly increasing their net worth because they may need to put together a strategy before they hit that $2 million mark. So the second passport gives you an exit plan. But the first thing that I said was important for having a second passport as an American, even knowing that if you leave and you have more than $2 million or you make the other test, that you're going to have some payment to make, is that you would have the future ability to opt out of future regulations, future taxes, future restrictions. And I have a lot of crypto investors, for example, who are saying, I wish I could invest, but all I have is U.S. passport, U.S. driver's license, all that kind of stuff. And so a lot of certain opportunities don't want me. Now, there's some banks and investments where no matter how many passports you have, if you're a U.S. person, they don't want you. But there are apparently some crypto opportunities where they just want an alternate ID. And so by having a second passport, you are opening yourself up not only to potentially more opportunities now. That's number one. But number two, the ability to opt out of future regulations, future tax increases, what have you. So let's say that right now, if you wanted to expatriate, your capital gains bill is $2 million, but they're going to raise the capital gains to $4 million. Well, you can get out under the old rules, or you can wait for the rates to go up. And then you're going to pay it whether you stay in the US or whether you leave. And so you want to be able to go. And so it's basically just an insurance policy against whatever may come next. I said, as someone who expatriated, I paid very little tax, if any tax in some years as an American. So for people saying, oh, he's just motivated by tax, not really. I sense they're going to have a lot more craziness coming down the line to where in much of 2020, you couldn't even renounce. So they could have come up with anything and said, well, hey, you're a US citizen, you have to deal with it. The greatest thing I got was peace of mind. So number 3 is peace of mind. Okay, number 4 would be the ability to expatriate, save on future gains if that's what you want to do, or expatriate just because, in my case, it's just like, I want to protect myself from whatever's coming next. Number 5 would be somewhere that you can be guaranteed to go if the U.S. becomes a financial or a physical risk. So we talked about the financial part. A lot of people are telling me, I don't like the way my country is headed. I don't like the direction in which it's headed. I don't feel safe here. Now, obviously, there's plenty of places in the U.S. you can go and live in the middle of nowhere. You'll probably be pretty safe. But if you believe there's some kind of physical risk, who knows what could happen? I mean, the last year and a half has shown us a lot of things can happen. Maybe they want to put new anti-freedom measures in place, and you don't want to be part of that. You've seen what's happened in Canada, where they're restricting people from flying and things like that. They've closed down borders. If you have a second citizenship, you have a place where you can go, and that country has got to let you in, unless its name is Australia, and then in which case you're probably screwed. So every other country, you're going to be able to get into that country. That is how international law is supposed to work. And so if you need a place to go, a residence permit could be an improvement. I've talked to Americans in particular about having a Mexican residence permit as a place you could just drive in if things got difficult. That wouldn't be the worst thing to have, and it would certainly elevate you above a tourist, especially in these times when residents and permanent residents and citizens have had an easier time getting in than tourists have. But having a place to go is important. What I would also say is number 6, your passport could be canceled at any time. Now, there's all kinds of reasons, and again, you've seen the extent to which some governments will go in the last year and a half. But one thing in the U.S. that they can do is if you have a $50,000 tax bill, they can cancel your passport or refuse to issue you a new one. And so let's just say, I heard a story recently of somebody who hadn't filed a number of years worth of tax returns for a foreign company they have, and they live overseas in a high tax country. They're not really paying any less tax than they would in the U.S. And so their U.S. accountant, and certainly their foreign accountant as well, never told them they've got to file a form in the U.S. to report that foreign corporation. Well, after like 5 years of filing, and potentially even sooner, they're going to already be in violation. If you don't file a tax return, or again, if your tax return gets lost 1 year, I think a lot of people have seen that happen where it just doesn't get to the IRS, especially if you're already living overseas. Something happens, they can just basically say, well, we know how much that you made according to this 1099 or this form or whatever, and now they want to spy in your bank accounts. They're going to know a lot more about your transactions. They put together a tax return assuming no deductions, assuming everything is the worst case scenario. Here's your bill. Now, again, if you don't get that in the mail, or it gets lost, or you live overseas and you didn't have a U.S. address to get it to, and things could get lost. Now, obviously, some people just aren't paying their taxes, which I don't recommend, right? I recommend you opt out of the system rather than simply not pay and become a scofflaw. But it's not that difficult in the realm of fines. I mean, there's one form in the U.S. Certain people, it's a $25,000 penalty. 2 of those, okay, you're done. And so that penalty was recently increased. So $50,000 ain't that hard to get to, especially when they're able to do the math that they want to get there. And so having that second passport gives you a passport to travel. And now let me be very clear, okay? I am, as I often say, say it together, the goody two-shoes of the offshore business. If you live in the United States, I understand you never signed the social contract to pay the taxes. I understand maybe you voted for the guy who wanted to lower your taxes, not the current people who want to raise them. But, us complaining about it is not going to change it. I've been a business person my entire life. I believe in action. Complaining is not going to change anything. So there are options for you to take. And so, getting yourself outside of the system is what a second passport can do. I would add number 7, by the way. Second passport is going to help you get in the mindset, right, of going where you're treated best. When you get your first second passport, maybe your only second passport, but for some of us, your first, you're going to look at it and you're just going to feel differently. I can't even entirely explain it to you. I don't think anyone can entirely explain it to you. You just have to feel it for yourself. You're going to finally feel like, I have options. Whatever happens in my country, US or otherwise, I have a place to go. I have more than one option. You just feel it in your body. And having that feeling, taking the actions of giving yourself options, being diversified, I think is going to open you up to asking yourself, am I really going where I'm treated best? And so you want to protect yourself. You want an opt-out. You want a backup. Again, you don't have to be an American, but especially if you're an American, out of all the restrictions, the chaos, the craziness, potentially higher taxes, you want a path to, whether it's simply living in another country, whether it's leaving the US for good, that's what a second passport can offer you. It is not a cure-all. I had someone recently ask, can I open certain bank accounts with a second passport? No, because your second passport is going to say you're born in the US, you're going to file all kinds of other stuff that says that you're still a US person. As long as you're a US citizen, if a bank or other institution doesn't take US citizens, they're not going to take you. If there's certain investments that aren't available, in some cases those can be accessed, but not always if you're a US citizen. You can't just go overseas and tell the Swiss bank, like the Wolf of Wall Street style, well, I'm a citizen of Dominica, so the US doesn't matter. It absolutely matters until you actually expatriate from the US. So there are plenty of things a second passport can't do. But the idea of the question, if you're going to pay the exit tax anyway, what's the issue? Well, first of all, if you're going to pay the exit tax and give up your citizenship, you want to have another citizenship, unless you want to be stateless and just pretty much stay in one part of the world the rest of your life or travel with great difficulty. You're going to want a second passport. That's what's going to trigger the exit tax, is the expatriation. But you know, for me, if you run a business, if you have a profitable investment that's going up and you expect further capital gains, potentially paying the exit tax isn't the end of the world. You know, it buys you back your freedom. And so that's why I think a second passport is so important for Americans. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.